Hi, thank you for watching our talk. My name is Miroslav Jonas and I'm a member of the Nx core team. You all know how amazing Nx is and how much heavy lifting it handles for you. My colleagues will share a lot of insights with you today on different aspects in which Nx can help you. We have crossed the 1 million weekly downloads recently. People around the world are loving Nx and saying they can't imagine a project without it. Nx does so much for you that it sometimes feels like magic. But in the sea of positive feedback, we didn't notice the opposite opinions. How it's too opinionated, that it has a steep learning curve, how it's only good for the large enterprise applications, or that it's too much to grasp. Nx has so many features built in that it can be scary for some folks. They might feel the project is slipping out of their hands. Initially, Jason and I were asked to come up with a talk that would dive even deeper into uncharted territories of Nx, showing features and possibilities most users don't know about. But Jason had a different idea. You see, we had a lot of talks showing the vast complexness and features of Nx, but none showing how simple it is under the hood. So today, we'll show you how to build your own Nx Workspace from scratch, using just the Nx package. We'll go back to the days where you would code in Notepad and knew what every line in your project was doing. Yes, the following demonstration we will use no plugins, no generators, just plain Nx. My colleague Jason will show you what a truly minimal Nx setup looks like, so make yourselves comfortable and enjoy the ride. And I hope you're hungry because we'll be making sandwiches today.
Hey everyone, my name is Jason. I work on the core of Nx and I've had the opportunity to work on some pretty massive projects. Sometimes when a project is that large, it's hard to see exactly how Nx is used inside that project and how to set it up from scratch. So that's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be taking this very minimal project and we're going to be adding Nx to it, and we're going to take a look along the way to see exactly how Nx knows the things that it knows. So for this project, we have a start script that starts an HTTP server, and it's just going to serve up all of the files in this directory. So I'm going to go ahead and run start, and I'm going to take a look at the code. So we have a sandwich shop, and it's going to bring in some scripts, which is going to add a sandwich to the page. And this sandwich.js file is going to be our main file for today. And if we go to the browser, we'll see that we have our title, but we have an empty sandwich because we don't have any ingredients for our sandwich yet. Before I add any ingredients, I'm going to start by adding Nx to this project. To do that, I'm going to install the Nx package locally as a dev dependency. While that happens, I'm going to create an nx.json file, and I'm going to keep it empty for now. This file does two things. First, it's going to allow Nx to know that this workspace actually is an Nx workspace. The second thing that it does is that it holds a couple of configuration options that we're going to provide later on in this talk. But for now, it's going to stay empty. The first thing that we can already do is that we can run nx graph inside of our directory. Here, we can see all of our projects, for which we have none of at the moment. Let's go ahead and add one. I've told us about this sandwich index.js, and it's inside this sandwich directory. I'm going to tell Nx that this is our first project. So we have this sandwich directory. Everything inside of it is going to be its own project. It has a project.json file, and Nx is going to be able to see this project.json file, and it's going to be able to show it to us when we run graph. So we see when we run graph, we can see the sandwich project.
So by installing Nx package, adding project.json and nx.json, we can tap onto power of the Nx for our projects.
And now that we have one project, why don't we add some ingredients into a separate project? So I'm going to create a new file. It's going to be under ingredients. I'm going to create some bread for our sandwich. So I have a bread directory, and like the sandwich directory, I'm going to tell Nx that this directory is its own project. So the files inside of this directory are going to be all under the bread project. If I run nx graph, I'm going to be able to see that I now have two projects. I have the sandwich project and I have the bread project that I just created. So we see that just by creating some new files, I can create new projects inside of NX. Now I'm going to write the code for the bread. First, I'm going to export a function. I'm going to call it bread, and we're going to create an element for this. So bread is going to equal document create element, and it's going to create a div. I'm going to give my bread some color, which is going to be its background, and I'm going to say it's wheat bread. Then I'm going to give it some thickness, which is going to be its height, and that's going to be around 30 pixels. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a class to my bread, and that class is going to give it some padding so that you can see around the bread and the individual slices. I'm going to return the bread, and we're going to use that inside of our sandwich. So I'm going to import the bread function from the ingredients bread directory. And as you remember, we have defined this directory as a separate Nx project. So we're inside the sandwich project, and we're importing into our bread directory, which is a separate Nx project. This way, Nx is going to know that a sandwich project is going to depend on our bread. So I'm going to add this bread to our sandwich, like that. I'm going to give it 2 slices of bread. And first I'm going to go to the web application. We're going to see that 2 pieces of bread show up. I'm also going to run nxgraph, and we're going to see that our sandwich project now depends on our bread project. And this relationship happens because we made that import before in index.js. Cool.
Nx knows that sandwich is depending on ingredients bread because it has analyzed the code and saw that sandwich is importing the file from ingredients bread project. This is automatically covered for TypeScript and JavaScript projects, but if you're using some other programming language, you can explicitly set these dependencies.
So now that we have some bread, I'd like to toast the bread before we go and add more ingredients to it. This way, it's a little bit crunchy. So every project in Nx has a set of targets that it can be run on it. You might be familiar with targets such as like test that use jest underneath, or like build that use webpack underneath, but targets can actually be anything we want. Today we're going to be a little bit silly, and we're going to say that our projects can be toasted, right? So I'm going to name it toast, and each target in Nx uses an executor to actually run it. I'm going to have to write this executor myself because there is no executor out there to toast a project. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to create a new directory called executors, and we're going to create executors.json file inside of there. This file is going to have a map of some executors, and I'm going to create a toaster executor. Every executor in Nx has 2 different things. One is going to be an implementation, and this is going to be a JavaScript file that's going to tell Nx exactly what to run when this executor is used. The second thing is going to be a schema file, and this is going to tell Nx that this executor can accept some options for it. So I'm going to go ahead and create these 2 files. And I'm going to go ahead and write the schema first. The first thing I'm going to say is that this executor is supposed to be used for Nx. So I'm going to say that the CLI is the Nx, and I'm going to give it some properties that it accepts. I'm going to say that we can set how long we want our bread to be toasted. So I'm going to give this a type of number. Then I'm going to go back, and before I write the implementation, I'm going to go back to my bread project, and I'm going to hook this all up. I'm going to say that I should look into my package.json, and I can define some executors that I can use here. And those are going to live in executors.json. So now I'm going to go back into my bread project, and I'm going to say look in the package.json in the root of my directory and use the toaster to toast my bread. I'm going to give it some options, which are to toast it for a duration of 2 seconds. That should be nice and crunchy. Now I'm going to go back and write the implementation for the toaster. So this is going to be a JavaScript function. And this function takes two things. First is going to be those options that we've been talking about, which is going to be the duration, and then also some context about the workspace that we're in right now. So I'm going to grab some stuff from our options. Duration is going to come from options. And one of the things that we get from the context is going to be our project name. So that's going to come from our context. So I'm going to console log out two things. One is going to be toasting our project name for duration divided by 1,000 seconds, right? So I was going to print this out. Now I'm going to wait for the duration. So I'm going to create a new promise. And it's going to wait for the duration. And then I'm going to console out that it's done. There we go. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tell NX that this project is actually, or this executor has succeeded. And the way I do that is I return success true. Gonna make this an async function really quick. And now I should have everything set up so that if I go to my bread project, I'm going to be able to toast it. So let's see if I've done everything correctly. Awesome. So it's going to start toasting my bread, wait 2 seconds, and then I'm going to have my bread toasted. Awesome. Now that I've written my toaster executor, I can reuse this executor through my other projects. So I'm going to copy this project JSON, and I'm going to also toast my sandwich. I'm going to toast my sandwich for a little bit less time than my bread. And now, just like I can run nx toast ingredients bread, I can also run toast sandwich. So this is going to toast it for 1 second.
And now, since we have our toast executor set up for both of our projects, we could be using, for example, EXECUTOR to run the executor only on the affected projects, or we could mark the executor to be cacheable in the NX config, so next time you would run it, you would immediately get the crunchy bread. Imagine if things work like this in the real life.
Cool. So executors don't always have to be the ones that we provide out of NX. You can write custom executors for your workspace to do maybe integrate tools that NX doesn't have first-party support for, or even silly things like toast your bread. The last thing that we're going to do today is we're going to create some more ingredients for our sandwich. So I'm going to go back to our code here, and I'm going to take a look at the bread function. A lot of this can be abstracted, so I'm going to copy my bread directory, and I'm going to say that it's going to be a create ingredients directory. And in this project, I'm going to say that it has a function called create ingredients, and this is going to take in the color and the thickness of my ingredient. So for thickness, I'm going to put it down here in pixels, and this is going to be my color. Instead of returning bread, I'm going to say it returns an ingredients. And then inside my bread, I'm going to go ahead and use this project. So I'm going to say return create ingredients, and it's going to be the color of wheat, and it's going to be 30 pixels. And I have to import this function. And again, because I'm importing from another NX project, NX is going to be able to tell me this relationship. So let me go ahead and verify that by running NX graph. So if I look at my bread project, I can see that my bread depends on this new utility function for creating ingredients, and I can still see that my sandwich brings in my bread. So if I've done this all correctly, and I go back into my web application, we should still see our 2 slices of bread, but we know that these are created from our utility function. With this utility function, I want to tell other developers in my workspace that they should be using this function to create other ingredients. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to create a custom generator. So I'm going to copy over the executors directory, and I'm going to name it generators instead. Generators is written a lot like executors, but instead of an executors.json file, we're going to have a generators.json file. Instead of a map of executors, we're going to have generators. And I'm going to call our new generator an ingredient generator. This generator is going to generate the code for our ingredients. And so I'm going to name this directory ingredients as well. I'm going to define a schema just like I did before for my executor. And one of those is going to be the name of the ingredient. The next one is going to be the color of my ingredient, which is also a string. And then it's going to also take a thickness for the ingredients. So we have our schema defined, and now what we're going to do is we're going to go into the implementation, and we're going to erase what we have from the executor, and this is going to take in a tree and some options. The options we saw that we defined in the schema before, and this tree is a representation of our filed tree.
You've noticed by now how executors and generators look almost the same, apart from the different naming. The only major difference is the signature of the function of the executor and generator, where for executor we had context because we are running a command, so we need to know in which context it is being run. We need to know whether it's running in affected command or normal run or run many, what kind of additional parameters we are passing by. With generator, we are more concerned about generation of the files, so we need a tree that will tell us the existing structure of the Nx Workspace and would allow us to then further generate or change files.
So we can do things like write to the file tree, and we're going to write something at a location. That location is going to be ingredients, and we're going to need to get something from the options. So we're going to say the name comes from our options. So it's going to go into the directory that it's named, and then the index.js file. And the contents of this file is going to be the same as bread.js. So we're going to copy that in there. And so whenever we use this generator, we're going to be able to create a file that looks just like this. Instead of being called bread, it's going to be called the name of the ingredients. And it's going to have the same color and the thickness that is passed. And we're also going to get that from our options. Okay. So we've written our index.js file, and we also want to make sure that all of our new ingredients are their separate NX projects. So we're also going to write our project.json file. So again, it's going to go into ingredients, the name of the ingredients, project.json file. And it's going to be an empty project. So if I were to generate a bread ingredient, I'm going to create an ingredients bread index.js. It's going to export a function named bread. It's going to have a color, which I might pass wheat, and some thickness. And it's also going to create the project.json file. So now that I've written this generator, I'm going to tell NX that it should use this collection whenever it wants to generate new things. So I'm going to tell the CLI that the default collection that it should use is in generators.json. So now I know that when I do nx generate ingredients, let's say I want some bacon in my sandwich, I can run this and it's going to create the bacon directory. It has a project.json and it also has the bacon function. I'm going to do this again for several other ingredients. I'm going to generate some lettuce for us. It's going to be a nice shade of green yellow. And I'm also going to generate a tomato ingredient. And it's going to have a color of tomato. So now we have some more ingredients to put into our sandwich. I'm going to make us a delicious BLT sandwich. So we're going to copy that a couple times. And we have our bacon, we have our tomato, and we have our lettuce. And we're going to go ahead and import those from the different projects. Bacon, tomato, lettuce. Okay, so I'm going to check our application to make sure everything was done correctly. And we can see that we have some bacon, tomato, and lettuce inside our sandwich. The bread has been toasted and it is now a delicious sandwich that we can consume.
Despite misconception, Nx is actually not opinionated at all. So for example, instead of bacon, if you're a vegan, you can put avocado, so you will have ALT sandwich. Or if you're like me, you would start with a cheese first.
So to recap that part, we used a generator just like you would generate an application or a library inside of a workspace. We have a separate one that uses our create ingredient function here and uses that to create some different ingredients for our sandwiches. So I can tell developers to run this command and just pass in the name of the ingredient that they want to add. That's about it for today.
I bet you didn't know Nx can be so simple. Hope you all enjoyed the demo and learned something new today. How to build a generator, how to build an executor, and how Nx knows where to find all the projects and identify the connections and calculate the dependencies. Thank you and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you all so much for listening. I'll be sticking around to answer any of your questions later, and I hope you all have a good rest of your day. Bye.